Welcome to episode 33 of Building Blocks with Brendan. Today we connect with Deirdre, the founder and CEO of Capsho. What's really interesting about our conversation today, like many others, is that the entrepreneurship journey. Deirdre started out making lava cakes, those tasty fudge cakes you see online. Well, made the desserts, had a few stores, and really kept growing from there in the hospitality business, had a burger restaurant. From there, and some challenges we speak about during the podcast, she flies over the ocean, lands in New York. From here, she starts a software business, which is brand new and a different challenge altogether. We talk about some of the differences going from the hospitality industry to the software industry and some of the learnings along the way. What's really interesting is we speak a lot about MVPs and the idea of really focusing on getting a product in customers' hands and editing and creating more and more, and really focusing on having small iterations and not having to use a large upfront need to hire a team. There's a lot you can do by being creative, and Deirdre really goes over her experiences and some of her tricks she has been able to do to develop Capsho. We also really speak about some of the unique things of running a team and being a manager for people. We speak of some of the key learnings of being a leader. Hope you guys enjoy this episode, learn a bit more about Deirdre's amazing story from making lava cakes to making awesome software, and everything in between. One of my big takeaways from today's conversation, and the term I'm starting using is sloth bosses, are an idea that helping entrepreneurs to get more out of their days in less amount of time. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. Check out Capsho and some of the amazing work she's doing and some of these new NFTs that might be coming out in the new year, as well as learning a bit more about really what it means to be an entrepreneur and all the stories along the way, and really trusting the process, because at the end of the day, things happen for a reason.
My name's Deirdre Tshien. I'm the CEO and founder of Capsho, and Capsho is a software, a tool that helps entrepreneurs turn their stories into a bank of captions and emails. So first of its kind that I know of. There are others out there that use data to kind of pull what other people have said in the past, or what they've posted in the past, to try to help you come up with your own. But really, we are really anchored in your story, in your perspective, in what it is that you have to say and share. So yeah, that's what we do.
And I mean, that's quite interesting. Obviously, right now with COVID and just in general, a lot more individuals entering the world of entrepreneurship or starting their own business. How did you come up with this idea or developing the product? I know, I mean, in your past, looks like you had some entrepreneurial experience. Was this something you were looking for a product and you developed yourself, or how did the idea get started?
Yeah, essentially, that's kind of, I find that that's a lot of times how it happens, and that's what I love about the journey, is because so many times when you're stuck there and you're like, this is not working, or why am I doing this? Like, I think I now have faith that everything does happen for a reason.
Mhm,
So even if I'm not particularly happy at any one time, or
mhm.
something happens, and I can definitely go into some specific stories about like
Yeah.
some big things that have happened, especially in business, things like that. Like, you kind of, when you're in it, it kind of isn't great, kind of sucks.
Mhm.
But then, you learn and you grow, and you come up with new ideas, and things happen. And that's really the beauty of it. It's innovation.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, for me, that was exactly, we went through our own journey, and as well, a journey with our clients. And it was like, wow, this is something that we definitely need to build for ourselves, for our clients. And hey, I think this is something that we can really meaningfully pursue.
And I mean, like you said, that tends to be most very similar journey for many others, where you see a need in the market, or so you have a problem you want to solve yourself, and you think, why not? I mean, why can't I be the one to kind of fix a lot of these problems, fix a lot of these issues? I start seeing. So when, so kind of with your journey into creating this business, what were you doing before? Were you coaching, working with other entrepreneurs, or how did you take the transition from what you were doing before to kind of really running this business, kind of putting more of your effort and time into this?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Why don't I take you through my journey?
Yeah.
Because I think that will give you a lot
Mhm.
of context. So, where do I even start? Okay. So I graduated from university back in Australia, in Sydney,
Mhm.
Australia, with a law degree. Now, my parents were a little bit disappointed because they wanted me to do a medical degree. They wanted me to go into
Yeah.
medicine, but law was kind of, the the halfway house.
Yeah.
But I actually very quickly realized that I didn't want to go into law. What I did end up doing was going to banking instead, which isn't
Mhm.
any much better. But it was kind of, I was just really fascinated with that industry, with corporate, with business,
Mhm.
and so that was kind of where I landed. And again, I think this always happens to me, and this is why I say, there's really no wrong decision that you can make in life, because
Mhm.
everything happens for a reason. Every decision you make is for a reason. And for me, I made a decision to go into corporate, into banking, which I did enjoy. I definitely enjoyed elements of it, but on the whole, I knew very early on that corporate wasn't going to be for me. And there was a specific moment actually that I realized that when I was quite fortunate to be put on a quite large project
Mhm.
of work. I was pretty much a junior burger at the time, but I was in these rooms with like senior executives all the way up to the CEO. And what was really fascinating was, while it was really great visibility and all of those things that you learn when you're in corporate, it I got the first-hand view as to kind of what you have to do and what you have to almost become to climb that corporate ladder.
Mhm.
And I just didn't want to do that. I just didn't want to, play those games, do all of that. So pretty early on, I knew that that was going to be for me. And then at the same time, my then partner, now husband, he was studying medicine, funnily enough, and he was not enjoying it. He was hating
Mhm.
life, and so I think we started talking about what could we do potentially, because at the time we didn't have anything holding us back. We didn't have a mortgage. We didn't have kids. Like none of that. We had just moved out. And with that, he had started really leaning into his love of baking and cooking and things like that. And one of the things that he loved to make was, or perfect, was this particular dessert. It was that I love.
Mhm.
It's a molten lava chocolate cake, where
Ooh.
you kind of, yeah, I know, you just, just hearing like lava chocolate is
Mhm.
like, that's exactly what it is, right? And his stuff was so good and his creations were so good that we were like, you know what, like maybe we can actually build a business around this. Like, why not? We could become people's happy places instead of like having to go to a bar or something, because not
Mhm.
everyone drinks. They could go to a dessert bar instead. And so that was our first business. It was in hospitality. We opened a dessert bar called the Choc Pot, and we grew that to 5 locations. And in the meantime, we also started a burger restaurant. We have 2 locations of
Mhm.
those, and they are still operating in Sydney right now.
Wow.
And yeah, so we did that. And then I want to say, I've lost track now, maybe 2.5, 3 years ago now, something happened. I actually found out, and this is what I mean, even from the beginning of this episode, when I was like, you go through some sucky things, and you just have to have faith that these experiences happen for a reason. And for us, one of those really not so great things is that we found out our store manager, who was really, really trusted employee of ours, of our busiest store, had been stealing from us, and for years. And I'm talking about like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like
Oh,
it was
wow.
a lot, it was a lot of money. And it was like I don't know, when something like that happens, like it's almost like a circuit breaker, right? You
Mhm.
kind of just start thinking about, is this what we want to be doing? Is this, and what we realized was that we had kind of built ourselves a bit of a hamster wheel. Like we kind of wanted to get away
Mhm.
from like the corporate hamster wheel and all these other things, but we just built ourselves a new hamster wheel. And that was how it felt. And at the time I was just like, you know what? Like I've always wanted to work and live overseas. So let's just like F it. Like let's just
Mhm.
do it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how we ended up in New York. Now, around the same time, I had actually been working on a new business idea with another co-founder. So
Mhm.
we had met in corporate. We had met in that investment bank that I was working in, and we were actually looking at, or we're experimenting with this fashion technology idea. And so that's what we actually came to New York to do. So can you imagine? We had like no certainty. It wasn't even a real business yet. We had no tech, like nothing. It was just like an idea. And we
Mhm.
were like, you know what, let's just move across the other side of the world and just give it a go. I don't know if I would recommend that for everyone. But it's definitely been an
Mhm.
experience. I can say that. So yeah, so we landed in New York. This was about 2 years ago, almost. Pretty much a bit more than 2 years ago. And we hit the ground running with like doing all the testing. We sort
Mhm.
of hit the pavement at NYU and Columbia Uni, because our college students, or sort of young professionals were
Mhm.
kind of our target market. And so we were doing a lot of interviews, a lot of testing. At the same time, we were talking to boutiques as well because we kind of needed two sides of the marketplace.
Mhm.
And what we ultimately found was that while it was a problem, it just wasn't a big enough problem, or it wasn't a problem that had enough, that was immediate enough, and we just didn't have the runway to be
Mhm.
able to sustain us to that point. Yeah. So we kind of just made the decision to fail that.
Right.
And then, but we were talking to these boutiques and we were like, and time again, when we were like, what do you need help with? It was always acquisition. That's what we need help with. And so we decided to jump into that problem and start helping them. Now, we did that from an agency perspective first,
Mhm.
and we did, really, really well. And then we were like, again, a little bit of a transition, but we wanted to kind of start helping um, e-commerce business
Mhm.
owners who were just trying to get started. And
Mhm.
so we then transitioned into coaching. And through that experience was when, and that's why I say, in working with our clients and even ourselves, one of the biggest pain points was like, I know how to create content, I know how to do these things. I'm a one-man band. How do I do this, and how do I? And so that's how we came up with, okay, how there has to be a way that we can systemize and put frameworks around
Mhm.
how we bring our founders' stories to life on things like social media, in their emails, blog posts, things like that. And so that's kind of what we set out to solve for. And fast forward, and that's we're now here. Capsho it's brand new. It's still a baby. It's only 2 months old. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so it feels like we're right at the beginning again, trying to grow this business. So yeah, that's kind of the journey and how we've ended up here where we are now.
that is a roller coaster, but a very exciting one, like you said. It's always the journey's always such an interesting part because it gets you to where you are today. But what's really interesting is, I mean, like you said, most of your past is related to, I mean, some food related or kind of touching on that. Now transitioning to more of a software, I mean, a tech good. Well, how was that transition like? Like having to develop. I mean, there's probably still some development on. I'm not too familiar with the, restaurant side of things, but I'm assuming it's a little bit of a different process. Was there any interesting learnings from that transition?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's kind of, it feels like a little bit of a black box when you,
Mhm.
and it was, to be fair, it was the same when we went into hospitality, because I was like, what's the first, like, do we find a place, like, and then how did leases work, and then like, it's so every new thing that you go into, right, it's kind of a bit of a black box, and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
I have no idea what's going on, and you just kind of figure it out. So for software was, yeah, it was really, because I think when, and I know I went through this, but when you think about software, you kind of think immediately, I need a developer.
Yeah.
Right? That's the first thing. It's like, oh my gosh, how it's going to be hard to find a developer, and especially because a lot of people are like, well, I can't afford to
Mhm.
potentially to hire a developer, so I'm probably going to have to find a tech co-founder.
Mhm.
That's kind of, I think, a very common path mindset that people go down. So for us, I had to kind of like talk to a few people and just really like research what is the proper way to actually get this up and going. So in the end, I mean, we didn't spend very much on what we have out now, which is our MVP.
Mhm.
And so the process that we went through is obviously, the other thing too is that because we're pretty good analytically. I'm pretty handy with spreadsheets and things like that. So I was kind of able, in a way, to build the engine, and it was just on spreadsheets, like it
Mhm.
wasn't anything fancy. Um, Ultimately, we would love to be able to use machine learning and things like that, but I don't have that capability. I don't know how to do that, and I was like, I just need to get something out there to test. Let me just do it manually to begin with,
Mhm.
right? So that was kind of the thought process, and I would highly encourage that everyone sort of approach it that way, because if you can do it as cheaply as possible, really what you want to be doing is just test that you
Yeah.
have something that people want to use, because it breaks my heart when I hear people spending hundreds of thousands putting something out there and it's just like, it goes nowhere. So for us, it was like, okay, how can we build as much of the engine, like the back end,
Mhm.
ourselves? And then how do we get someone to just, so instead of just going straight to a developer, there's
Mhm.
actually another step in between, which was getting a designer, because the only way that you can really show your developer exactly what it is that you're looking for, and also probably shortcut a lot of the development work, is to actually have the UI designed,
Hmm.
so the user interface designed,
Hmm.
and then the developer can just pick that up and go, oh, okay, I just need to code these
Yeah.
things in. So that was a big learning for me. It probably sounds small now, but at the time I was like, oh my gosh, like, that saved me, probably thousands of dollars. So it was like I built that engine. I got it to a point where I
Hmm.
was like, okay, designer, this is kind of what I need it to do,
Hmm.
and look like. And then developer. Okay, you've got all the things that you need. You just need to like kind of piece it all together.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the process that we went through.
That's so interesting. 'Cause I think one of the biggest things I hear from a lot of founders, and even from what I've seen working for many startups along the way, is that having a cheap way to test and iterate with an MVP is the biggest thing. And I think a lot of times, especially in the tech world, it always seems like very complex. Like, okay, I have this idea, I want to develop this product. I need to hire a team of developers. I need to do this without
Yes.
even talking or even talking to your customers or even testing it out, which is such a big risk. Like you're saying, you can spend hundreds of thousands just for people to either use it completely wrong, or that you think they're like, okay, well, this is simple. They're going to click this button, go here, and never the case. It's
Yes.
always more. It's always different how the real users use your product. But also, a lot of times, you can get the same feedback for a very low cost or even like a very minimal MVP. And I think that's so important to touch on, that you can really test almost any product to a pretty high degree without ever having to really spend a dollar or spend very few dollars just to see
Mm,
if you're getting users to get it. And I always think the interesting MVPs you always hear about, like getting started with even the biggest companies, it's always the simplest things to test the concept,
yes.
and then they have the power to develop their
Yes.
products along the way. And just making those small wireframes to get people to click through it, get it up and running is so interesting and so fun. I used to love creating MVPs all the time for a lot of my smaller teams I worked with before, and it is a skill. It is a big skill that sounds simple to do, but developing good, effective ways of testing is so important. So you develop your MVP, you have an idea now, or you start working with a development team. How do you start approaching the launch? Did you have a list of clients you worked with in the past and they were your first testers? How did you get the first initial cohort to test out the application and start getting that feedback?
Yeah, so yeah, we have our clients, which is great. So I would highly encourage, like, if people are thinking of getting into software, building your audience is it's. I mean, this is really any business, not just software, but especially software, right? Because you just put money into building something, and to your point, you need to get it tested quickly. So if you can have an audience that you can actually go into, tap into, then that is
Mhm.
perfect. So for us, yeah, we have clients who we immediately were like, as part of your program membership, you get free access to Capsho,
Mhm.
which is a great value add for them as well. And it's kind of like, look, and they understand, everyone understands, right, that it's kind of in, beta version or even alpha version,
Mhm.
probably. And, we're just really trying to almost like, obviously we want to make their lives easier, but also, the more that they use it and give us feedback, the better that we can make it for them.
Mhm.
And they know that ultimately it's for them. So yeah, so we had clients, and the other thing too is that we didn't take the approach of like we're trying to sell software. We're taking the approach of, and I guess this is also coming from a bit of a coaching background, where we actually are going to be selling knowledge coaching, of which the software is just an enabler of a lot of the implementation.
Mhm.
And that has been really, really powerful for us, because you can imagine it's hard to sell software. Like, there's so much out
Yeah.
there. And sometimes, and especially when it's kind of a new thing, it's hard to get the concept across of what it is that your thing
Mhm.
actually does. And so we've kind of just gone down the path, instead of going like of being, well, no, we actually, what we're doing is we're selling training, we're selling courses, we're selling
Mhm.
coaching, we're selling programs, and then hey, Capsho is actually going to be a really, really great value add as part of that. So that's also how we've started to build up our initial testers,
Mhm.
and we've got some really great feedback already that I'm so excited to get into the next iteration of Capsho. So it's just going to it's just going to become bigger and better every time. So it's going to be so
Mhm.
awesome.
And that's such a smart approach. I think a lot of times when I'm speaking or even asking a lot of people when they want to get into business, they always say, like, how do I get started? Or what am I supposed to do? And I think one of the feedback I've heard from a lot of people is even if it's like multi years, I knew someone who was going to be a nutrition coach. So, but
Mm.
while before they started school, they started a Instagram page, started a website, personal brand, just to get a audience, so that when they were able to sell their product or finally became a coach, they had their target audience. They had people who could right away buy their product or get involved with their coaching. I think, like you in your approach, like you're saying, is you're developing this software, but you weren't trying to sell. You already had customers, individuals who you're working with that you could include it on top, get the feedback, and then not and kind of build relationships from there. And I think that's a I wouldn't. I would say it's a safer approach, but I don't think it's. I think it's just more of a smart approach, trying to really
Yeah.
work with what you have and grow your brand from there. And I think, like you said, one of the hard things I've a lot of times seen, especially in the software world, is if you develop a product, no matter how good it is, if you don't have eyes on it or you don't have people trying it out, it's hard to sell anything. You need to get eye, especially in a new or even more unique software in regards to trying to do something a little bit different. You need testers, and I think having a brand or having a following or having individuals who are already invested in the methodology is so important. And that's
Yeah,
a really unique approach.
Yeah, 100%. And, one of my mentors was, saying that, when you are in business and you start a business, especially like you're actually, the funny thing is that we get into business because we get so excited about a product, right?
Mhm,
Like for me, it could be, I'm so excited about this software, this Capsho, it's going to be the thing. But I think that's the mistake that a lot of new business owners make is that that's what they get excited. And so it's like, I need to build this thing and I need to get it perfect before I can
mhm,
then market it. But really, the way that we have to think about it is that if you're going into business, you're actually a marketer. Like
mhm,
all business owners are marketers. That has to fundamentally be where you start. So to your point, it's like even before you have the product, even before like market market it. And
yeah.
even if it's not market, you're not marketing the product, you want to be marketing the problem, you want to be marketing, you want to be building a tribe, an audience around like a common purpose, which is generally the problem that you're solving for. And then when you then you have like people just waiting for you to drop the solution. And that's really how I think, if I were to do, because I made all of those mistakes. Like I'm going to be honest, when I first built my even first two, three businesses,
Mhm,
I was like, the mindset was like, I love my product. I love what we do. It's the best thing since sliced
mhm.
bread. We're going to have our doors like
Yeah.
standard down. And that just did not happen. It did not happen. Even though literally I know it's the best, for example, dessert in Sydney,
Mhm,
like hands down. And that's because we had to make the transition to being marketers, and that's
mhm,
really uncomfortable. It's a really, really uncomfortable transition to make. So it's easy to say now, but it's actually a really, really hard thing. So I
mhm,
totally empathize with all business owners when they're trying to get the word out there.
mhm. Yeah, and I think that's one thing I remember someone always says is like if you're a CEO, you're still at the end of the day a salesperson or a marketing person. Like that, if you can't speak to your product or if you can't sell your product, it's almost impossible to get others to believe in the same mission. I think that's one of the things I found early on is a lot of times CEOs or at least the founders, no matter even if it's not in their wheelhouse, they almost have to become salespeople, whether it be selling to customers or getting your first customers out there, or even selling the idea to their employees. Because I think a lot of times people forget that when trying to start a business or even found a small team, a lot of
Yes.
people look for you as the founder to give them inspiration, kind of be that guiding light in a lot of the scenarios. And I think, especially working a lot of tech companies I work with, is that a lot of times if you're even a technical co-founder, your skills are tech, you always forget that okay, or it's sometimes hard to develop those people or even business skills to realize you have to sell a product. Even if you never want to do sales, it's always good to have that little more of a generalistic approach to be able to touch on everything just so it's easier to manage a team and manage a business.
Oh,
Um,
100%. Yeah. And like even as recently as this week,
mhm,
because so as I said, like Capsho itself, it's still a baby. It's
mhm,
only 2 months old, and so I've kind of been using this time trying to, in my own mind, clarify what is our purpose, because I kind of it's kind of swimming around in my
mhm,
head. It's like you kind of, and I just needed to clarify it, and I
mhm,
got to that point of clarity like probably a couple of weeks ago.
mhm,
And I this week I kind of caught up with the team, and I work with a lot of overseas VAs as well, and part of the program that we're launching actually next month, is what we're calling Capsho CEOs. And what Capsho CEOs is going to help to founders to do is to actually get on social media, get there, build their credibility and authority, get themselves visible, get leads, but do it in under 2 hours a week. And so what that means is using Capsho, because that's part of systemization, but also outsourcing, like systemizing, delegating, outsourcing to cost-effective VAs, overseas VAs. So basically, the approach, like literally the process that I'm going through with my own VAs, that's what we're going to be teaching. So this week I caught up, as a team, and I shared with them my vision. I was like, this is what I want to be building. I want to be building the next generation of what I call sloth bosses, because, be like entrepreneurs who can grow a thriving business, but not at the expense of their sanity or time or their time. So they can be lazy, but they're intelligently lazy because they know the right things to do and where they should be putting their efforts into. So that's my vision. But also alongside that, I want to be able to create opportunities for, like for women or even men in developing countries, people who don't necessarily have the same opportunities. Even down the track, I'd love to be able to help, like people who've been saved from things like sex slavery and things like be able to get back on their feet through using skills like virtual skills, like becoming a VA in some way. So that's kind of the vision that I shared with them. And I was like, and I know that I'm asking you to do some really, really unsexy things like systemize everything. Let's create the training. Let's create the SOPs. And like, it's stuff that all of us are like, oh, why do we have to do this? And I was like, but guys, every time, like, the reason why is because if we think about the vision about creating these two communities, one of like, entrepreneurs who can, who have this thriving business, but not at the expense of their sanity, and these VA, like providing opportunities for VAs to, for that ecosystem to work, we need to do this unsexy work for that to happen. And they're like, yeah, like I can buy into that. Now I know why I have to do the really unsexy. So, to your point about this is like how, it's so important for people to learn how to lead and manage a team. It all starts from you, right? As the CEO, as the founder, like how can you sell your purpose, your vision, your dream so that everyone is aligned as to what that end outcome is and why you're working towards that.
Oh, for sure. And I think what you said, something I always say is that a lot of times, especially looking outside from looking in the startup world, everyone always thinks the startup world is very sexy. You mean hundreds of $1 million flying around. But in a world, like you said, a lot of unsexy things you have to do, a lot of process improvements, a lot of like, I don't say minimal tasks, but because they're important tasks, but a lot of like slow, arduous, like time-consuming things to get processes in place, to work to develop whether it be supply chain on the other side of things, or even like a documentation on why we do certain things to help further training. And I think that's why being a good leader is so important, is that you have to be able to, I mean, certain tasks are going to suck and be annoying no matter what, no matter how good you are at selling it. It's not everything can be fun all the time, but at least selling, like you said, the mission and the vision, saying this is why we have to do, this is why we have to build out this process. So in the future, we first don't have to do this again, but also in the future, we can help others and kind of grow the business. I think that's so important, is really sharing that mission to every individual across the team, so they know how their work, whether how unsexy or how annoying it is contributing to a larger and better future for the business and for themselves. So
Yeah,
it's
totally.
quite unique.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about where we're heading. It still feels like, and and again, this is like, we talked before about what you go through in the moment, right? As an entrepreneur trying to build a business. And right now it's like, I'm like right at the beginning. I'm like, all of the struggles of trying to build a business from scratch, trying to get your brand name out there, trying to build an audience, and not just an audience, but more traffic, and trying to get conversions, like all of those things, which in a way it becomes easier as you scale, but it's still a similar problem, like wherever you are, whatever stage you are in your business. Those are all like, it's painful right now. Like, I'm going to be honest. It's, and it is like, that's why it's so important to have that why, that purpose, that vision, because it's like in these moments, I'm like, why am I doing this again? Like,
Hmm.
why am I putting myself through this? And it's really, really important to anchor yourself. So for any other entrepreneurs
Hmm.
listening, it's so important to anchor yourself back into that, because it's the only way you're going to keep yourself going.
And obviously, like you said, the Capture's only been around for, still quite young, only 2 months. But as things are getting probably getting more developed, have you seen more and more people kind of just stumbling upon Capsho independent of you, and like people you work with, kind of like coming in through the website, starting those conversations, and realizing there's a whole process, whole courses behind this? Has that been an interesting transition where it's almost like you're now a little bit in software sales as well, where it's kind of selling itself?
Yeah, yeah. So, um, yeah, definitely. And it's probably at the point before, like, so not so much that they're just
Hmm.
stumbling across the software like that, but they're stumbling across me, they're stumbling across
Hmm.
my group, my community, they're stumbling across, my Instagram, things like
Hmm.
that, first. And then from
Hmm.
there, it's like, oh, like, what do you do? And then we have a conversation, and it's like, wow, this is really cool. Like, yes, I need this. So yeah, so definitely at this beginning phase, that's what I'm
Hmm.
finding. It's a lot more high touch. I want to say,
Yeah.
which I know for a lot of people who probably want to get into software, it's like, oh, isn't like I just want it to run because I don't want to have to talk to people. I don't want to have to do, but it's
Hmm.
you kind of have to, right? Like your
Hmm.
first few customers, your first few clients are the ones that you're going to need to kind of convince, because yeah, you don't have the scale, you don't have the brand name, you don't have
Yeah.
the thing. So yeah, so it's a little bit of a higher touch, but yeah, they're totally stumbling across just because I create content. I've got a YouTube channel, I've got on Instagram and
Mhm.
TikTok. I'm creating all this content, so that's how you kind of need to get yourself visible.
Mm. And I think what's really funny, as you said, is you make a software, you expect it almost to sell itself. And I was in the same way early on, working with our, even other businesses as well, where you think like, oh, I made the product, it's software, it just put it out there, people will click on the link and download it, and we'll make
Yeah.
millions. And you realize no matter how like simplistic it is, even if it's $10 when you're starting off, or
Mhm.
even $100 a month, which you were thinking, okay, that's it's not scalable for me to make all those phone calls or connect. But that's what you have to do when you start out, because you have to build that repertoire, you have to build those customers. And I think that's, no matter what business you're in, even in software, I always find that everything when you're starting out is very high touch. It is you talking to people, getting those conversations happening. And it's I think one of those things a lot of founders I've spoken to, starting out, you always forget how much work that is. And you always, even in the, like you said, you love your product, it's as good as best than sliced bread, but you have to tell other people still. And it's really
Yes.
funny how you were saying how even with software, it's still very high touch point. I think that's almost every industry, that there's a lot of m- hours being put into growing that. You kind of, it's funny because this has come up in many times. You've touched on, obviously, like there's different social media platforms to market yourself and brand yourself.
Mm.
Um, and how, obviously, Capture was kind of trying to work on helping you streamline that and work in different platforms. But how were you able to choose which platforms to focus on? Have you found ones more effective for getting feedback, or more effective for getting customers versus others? Or how were you able to choose where to spend more of your time in?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that is going to come down to comfort levels as well. I'm going to be
Yeah.
honest. So I actually built pretty much. I feel like I built or at least grew my first business
Mhm.
off the back of Instagram.
Mhm.
We were kind of it was, we had the business, nine. It started at about like 9-ish years ago, and that was kind of
Mhm.
when Instagram was just starting to get scale. So we kind of rode that wave, and because
Mhm.
of that, I am personally a lot more familiar with it, and I love the fact that it,
Mhm.
because it kind of steals, other people's, so it
Yeah.
kind of brings together all the best of, short form different types of short
Mhm.
form content with, longer form captions. So it kind of has kind of everything, and then from there you
Mhm.
can then start to look at how you repurpose. Now you want to repurpose, like I say repurpose, and I don't really love that
Mhm.
word, because I don't just mean literally lift and shift, but it's like
Mhm.
you use the concept, the themes, maybe some of the raw footage, but you need to, every time you repurpose, you need to think about how the specific platform actually works. So I never use, for example, I create reels, but I don't use it as for TikTok, for example,
Mhm.
because it's very different audiences. Different things are trending on there. The platforms are pushing different type of content, so you kind of want to, get into. So all that to say, if you're starting, I would just focus on one.
Mhm.
I am fortunate because I've been, doing it for a little bit longer, and I have like a team of VAs that help me.
Yeah.
So I can just focus on creating some of the content, but they do literally everything else. They do all the editing, they do all the, like everything. So like so for people who are getting started in terms of how to decide where to be on, um, it's going to come down to comfort levels only because, and this is a broad blanket statement, right? You always have to start with obviously where your target customer is. Generally, I find that to your point at the very beginning, we tend to solve problems for ourselves, which means that we're our target customer in a way. And wherever you like spending time on is probably a pretty good bet that your target customer is probably spending more time there as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of sounds like binary, and I don't mean to make it sound that way. It's very, but that's kind of how I very simplistically think about it. So you definitely want to start about where your target customer is, and then you really want to kind of dive. And the reason why I say focus on one is because you need to figure that platform out. Like each platform works so differently, and unless you can spend the time to actually figure it out, you're actually going to get you're going to get nothing from it. Because you know what I mean? Like a lot of us are like, oh yeah, we're everywhere and we're posting all this content. But if you haven't figured it out, you're getting no reach, you're getting no engagement, you're getting no visibility, you're getting no leads from the content you're actually putting out there. So what is even the point of doing it? So that's kind of, first of all, figure out where your target customer is, and then work that platform out.
That is so true. I think one of the big things I keep hearing is that for a lot of individuals, I think the first step is, okay, I need a TikTok, an Instagram, a Twitter, a Facebook, a LinkedIn. I need to do everything because customers are everywhere. But for most of the business I spoke to, very similar advice is focus on one platform because it's like, I forget the saying, it's, master of none. It's almost like master of none. If you're
Yes.
trying to use the same content for everything,
Yeah.
you're not really doing your best. And at the same time, I think it's the whole idea of hate the word viral, but if you can do something very well on one platform, the scale is so much larger. If you can get the algorithms behind you, you can get much more of a reach than having it posted 50 different times. I think that's one thing I've seen a lot more businesses get a little bit better with now is having content made for TikTok is different than content made for Instagram. Being understanding that you can copy and paste, but you will not get the same results. And also choosing your what you're comfortable with. I think that's an interesting thing as well. I know someone. So TikTok's obviously a very popular thing, but for a few people who had in this consumer packaged goods world, they were at first hesitant, saying, "Oh, TikTok's made for children. I don't want to do this." But then they've had their greatest success, and now they only focus on TikTok because they realized Instagram wasn't for their market. So I also think like being open to certain platforms, because I know a lot of times platforms, even like LinkedIn, a lot of people felt, "Oh, that's too professional," but for a lot of coaching and other types of business, it's by far the best. So I think it's always important to look at all your options because you never know what happened. Like I said, a few people on TikTok who never thought it'd be anything and got millions of views, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a TikTok star." Like this is not. It's like this is great. So it's always interesting to kind of put your focus into one place and get really good at it because it's so different. I think I always underestimated how important social media was or how hard it was to be very good at it. I always thought like, oh, just kids posting. I sound so much older than I am, but like I always thought it was like just people posting. There's not much skill. Then you realize why there's social media managers, why there's marketing managers who specifically focus on following this. So that's great advice. I think, especially trying to grow businesses, really, like you said, being really focusing on one and putting your effort in there, not having to spread yourself thin and not get the results you're expecting.
Yeah.
So obviously, business is still quite young. Things are still growing. What does the next year, 5 years look like? Where do you really see the kind of what's the direction you're trying to get to and kind of build out more?
Yeah, I'm really, really excited because we are going to be going full steam ahead on, iterating and continue to build on the actual software, so Capsho. As I said, we're going to be using data heavily because I want to start to plug machine learning, as part of AI into it, because I really want to be able to create something that is data driven. And what that means is that not only are you able to put your stories in, it's going to actually use data to be like, these are the best types of hooks to use. These are the best call to
Mm,
actions. These are the hashtags you should be using at a very micro level. That's where we can start with the data. But then also, I want to make it really easy for people to input. So MVP right now is for us is that people are actually like we take people through a structured process of telling their story, but they're typing it, right? They're kind of like answering questions in a way. And then at the back of it, you spits out a bank of captions and emails. So that's kind of, it's very like, it's in its very infancy, but I want to really make that smart and seamless and really intuitive for people to be using. So I'm really, really excited to be getting into the data space next year with Capsho. I'm really excited to be continuing to build our coaching as well because I think that's sometimes the other mistake as well that we can make with software is like we kind of throw software at people and we're like, yeah, you can figure it out. Whereas, I think the coaching element is going to be really, really important to not only get more people on the platform using it, testing it for us, but like to actually, because we want it to be impactful for people. Like we want people genuinely to be using it and for it to be helping. And for now, I think the coaching element is going to be really important to help facilitate that. And then the third part is we are going to be launching NFTs. Like it's just going to be super exciting.
ooh,
So that's probably going to be in the new year. We're still working out the
mhm.
kinks and getting our heads fully around it. But yeah, that's on the roadmap as well. So that's kind of the three things that we're going to be focusing on heavily.
That's so exciting. I mean, I think, like you said, focusing on really growing the business, growing the software, adding more of the machine learning and AI to it to enhance the product, but alongside obviously still growing the business through the still growing the coaching business and really working with your existing customers and new customers to continue growing and adapting and using that data driven approach. I know a lot of times people always say we're data driven, but it's very interesting once you actually start a business, like how much data is important and actually using it to help predict or help guide where the business goes can
Yeah.
save so much time, effort, and money. It's similar like you said, similar to having a MVP, just figuring out what people want and almost taking a step back and not saying, okay, I'm no longer building this just for me. I'm
Yes.
building this for customers. And I think that sounds easier said than done. I know a lot of times, especially in small businesses, once because it's your baby, like you say, something you create, you always it doesn't feel bad, but it's always challenging to realize, okay, I need to let the customers who are paying for it help decide or help guide where the future goes. It's so kind of grew up a little bit. It's kind of being a teenager. It's going away now. It's learning. The data is teaching it different things. So it's always an interesting process. And the NFT space is so exciting right now, especially with different ways for helping organizations add more value to their
Mm.
products and kind of change things up. So that's a really exciting added a benefit to the platform. How did you get involved with the NFT space? Was it something you were interested in before? Kind of how did that? That's always like a unique little. I mean, it's getting more and more popular now, but that's
Yeah.
early on in the conversation still with introducing those into a business.
Yeah, it is. I think I don't even know how. I think it's just like like my husband's super fascinated by like crypto and things like that. And when we're not big like I wouldn't say we're like really we love risk. I it's more like calculated risk if you know what
Yeah.
I mean. And I think what I really loved about the concept of NFTs like because crypto is kind of like you are kind of gambling, right? Like you're putting money into
Yes.
something for yeah.
Yes.
There is a gambling element, but what I really like is like the nexus of how, as you said, you can bring a business element to it. So for us, we're trying to think really differently about how we even uh, come up with the concept of our NFTs because it's like, how do we plug it in with what we do at a coaching and software level? But then, I think, as I mentioned, we have this vision of like ultimately coming up, having a not for profit and things like that. And so, how can we almost bring a giving element to the value of what it is that we're selling so that we can get closer to that vision. And so it's not to say that we're going to build our own not for profit now, but how can we help facilitate micro lending and things like that can help other women get on their feet. So we're kind of trying to, and that's why I'm really really fascinated with NFTs because it actually has the capability and the openness to bring all of these different things together. So yes, that's kind of what got my mind going and got me fascinated with it.
I mean, and that's so exciting. I've seen some businesses use NFTs as a way of having almost software licenses you can resell or giving a way of tracking donations or tracking impacts through the blockchain and through a very public way of ensuring that what things are happening, kind of having a whole way of tracking the process. And I really think it's interesting. More businesses are exploring ways of utilizing new technologies to better the business.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, your story very interesting, kind of from making lava cakes to where you are today, developing AI software and NFTs. Really, 180 shift, almost 360, because you spun back right around and becoming very successful again. If people want to follow along, learn more, kind of what's the best way to get in contact and follow your journey?
Yeah, so I guess on Instagram you can find me. It's just my full name, Deirdre Tshien. Or if you want to kind of get more involved in something where I teach my strategy, I do have a 4-day boot camp. It's called Scale Your Funnel with Instagram. So you can sign up for that, register for that at capshounlocked.com/scale. So I can give that to you as well, Brendan. So you can put that in the show notes. But yeah, come along, join us. It's a lot of fun, and you'll learn a ton about our strategy, about how you can use social media to get visible, build your credibility, and fundamentally get leads, but like in under 2 hours a week of your time, which is awesome.